So what is it that the banksters, the billionaires, and the transnational CEOs see that most Americans don't see? It's the end of U.S. dominance in the global economy. And not just U.S. dominance, the end of Western dominance altogether. Right now, a global power shift is occurring underneath all of us, with the United States economy still struggling through the muck and the European economy in complete free fall. New economic powers around the world are seeing this as an opportunity to gain more power in the global marketplace. Those new economic powers are known as the BRIC nations: Brazil, Russia, India, and China, plus South Africa. The BRIC nations are home to 40% of the world's population and already account for a quarter of the global economy. And this week it was revealed that the BRIC nations are already preparing for the economic transition. In a direct affront to Western financial institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, India is spearheading a plan for the BRIC nations to create their own multilateral bank, one that will be funded by developing nations to finance economic projects within developing nations. They see what the technocrats at the IMF are doing to Europe and have done to developing nations for the last 30 years with their austerity measures, and they don't want any part of it. And looking at the economic trends, it won't be too long until these rapidly developing BRIC nations will have the economic power to not only completely remove themselves from traditional Western central banks, but also to call the shots in the global economy. Let's take a look at IMF growth projections for Western nations versus BRIC nations. In 2012, the United States economy is projected to grow by 1.8%, a meager 1.8%. As for the 17-nation Eurozone, its economy is projected to shrink by 0.5%. But looking at the BRIC nations, it's a much different story. South Africa is projected to grow at 2.5%. Brazil is looking at a 3% growth rate. Russia will nearly double the United States with 3.3% growth. India is on pace for a whopping 7% growth rate. And China leads the pack with a blistering 8.2% projected growth rate. One side is going down. The other side is going up. The economic momentum cannot be ignored. And here's the big secret. American banksters and transnational CEOs know what's happening. That's why they're looting America of whatever wealth she still has left. And then why they're taking their business overseas to the developing world. That's why millions of American manufacturing jobs have been shipped overseas. That's why $4,000 worth of American industry is sold off to some foreign investor every single second in America. That's why financial elites are stashing their profits in offshore bank accounts. They don't want to contribute anymore to the sinking ship that they perceive to be the United States. This attitude is summed up perfectly in a recent article for The Atlantic magazine by journalist Krista Freeland, when she quoted an unnamed CEO who said simply, if the transformation of the world economy lifts 4 people in China and India out of poverty into the middle class, and meanwhile one American drops out of the middle class, that's not such a bad trade. You see, it's no longer about nationalism or pride of the country you were born in. It's now all about where is there money to be made. And right now, the best place to make money is in the BRIC nations. Why? Because they've watched 30 years of Reaganomics, and they've seen how it's hollowed out America and destroyed our middle class. They've watched Chicago's school economists, Milton and Tom Friedman, economic policies played out by the IMF and the World Bank, and in countries from Chile to Argentina to what the Republican Party is doing right now in the United States. And they've seen it destroy state and national economies. They're smart enough to know that they want no part of our stupidity. They'll let us continue to worship Reagan and the Friedmans, but they're going their own way, which ironically was the way we went from the 1940s until the Reagan Revolution. Back in those days when America led the world in growth and prosperity. Back in the days before we drank Ronald Reagan's Kool-Aid and got stupid. The rest of us Americans who still want to live in a nation that can provide economic prosperity to a vast middle class, we have a big job ahead of us. If we don't take back our government and our economy soon, by cracking down on job outsourcers, by reining in Wall Street, by rolling back the Reagan tax cuts, and by enforcing the Sherman Act to break up big businesses, then we're in for one rough ride. The Reaganomics idiocy, now promoted by Paul Ryan and the Tea Party, continues to make our billionaires richer while dragging the rest of our nation into one long slide downwards. It's time to wake up, America.